Hey guys, good afternoon. Hey, today I wanted to discuss something, that kind of follows through what I normally do, the past few videos that I did. And today I really want to talk about self-deception because I think this is pretty important. And over the years, I've sort of noticed that, the older people get, the self-deception seems to rise. So, something I just think maybe, we kind of need to look at all facets, so without wasting any more time, we got a lot to do. So let's kind of just jump into it. Okay. So what is self-deception? Okay. Well, obviously, self-deception is the act of intentionally lying to maintain your social validity in the world of fitting in. It is forcing and fooling yourself to believe false things and denying truthful things. Okay, in self-deception, it's a little harder to admit and detect. Basically, this type of lying self-deception occurs when a person is not psychologically, mentally strong enough to be honest with themselves. Okay, and that it does suck, and it is, heartbreaking a little bit. Some examples, though, kind of about fitting in, like with the, social standard of, self, deception, because everybody lies to themselves, we all do. But this would be about maybe like lying about your career path or lying about, why you're with your significant other, little things like that. But overall, we deceive ourselves due to our lack of psychological strength to bear and deal with the consequences that follow those lies, that deception, okay? But really, you must acknowledge at some point in time who you really are up here in your conscious minds. And basically, why is self-deception a big deal? Okay, well, basically, we live the truth whether we believe it or not. Okay, so basically what I mean by this is, it is shown, our truth is shown in our thinking patterns, our behaviors, our emotional responses, our, relationships, whether platonic or, romantic or anything like that. I mean, by doing this, by deceiving yourself, self-deception, you are not only hurting yourself, but you're also hurting the ones around you and people you love, because what you're doing when you're self-deceiving is you are not taking responsibility for who you are as a person. Okay. And we often need to, kind of lead by examples. And, a couple, examples here that I want to use is a lot of times, these individuals that self-deceive, use self-deception, they will often use like painful experiences or, something sad that has happened to maybe them or their family, that sort of thing. A lot of times too, they will even throw in what I call perceived trauma. Okay. So it's basically like trauma that has never happened. Okay, but in their mind, they are perceived, that trauma was perceived to them. They truly are trying to fool themselves, and they truly believe that this trauma has happened to them, when in actuality it hasn't. Okay, so that's also another form of denial too. But basically, when we don't take responsibility for our actions, we are hurting those around us, near us, indirectly and directly. Okay, and especially if you have kids, that's a major problem. Okay, but basically overall, we would rather lie to ourselves and, use deceit than be honest with ourselves and admit to ourselves who we really are. Okay. But basically self-deception, like I said, it does cause a domino effect. Basically self-deception, overall, it can lead to mental, acts of cruelty, psychological, acts of cruelty, because what we are doing is when we are deceiving ourselves, okay, and we're putting these deceptions, these lies on other people, we are spreading these lies like wildfire. Okay, so it's kind of like the domino. You knock over one, it's a chain effect. Okay, but basically, people. Some people will argue that they would never be capable, of lying or committing atrocities, based on these lies, that sort of thing. But in actuality, anybody is capable of anything, provided that they have the right environment. Okay, so I don't put anything past anybody. You know, and you're more stubborn people who are going to try to negate this. These are generally going to be your true narcissists, like we had talked about, hedonistic behaviors or the hedonistic, you know, individual types, that sort of thing. And they're going to try to convince not only you, but themselves that, oh my gosh, I would never be capable of doing this. I couldn't lie to somebody like that. Excuse me, and lie to my kids like that. So on and so forth. Okay, well, now you're adding to more self-deception, okay? And self-deception, it often leaves us with a massive amount of regret, you know, and or guilt. And I say what I mean by this is the choices we've made in the past, you know, self-deceiving, the choices we've made have had harmful and, you know, very heartbreaking effects due to our lack of being honest and being honest with ourselves, you know, and you're going to have the handful of people, like I said, generally, you know, the true narcissist, you know, antisocial trait, you know, psychopaths, things like that. They choose not to change. They know they're being self-deceptive, but they choose not to change. Okay. And this is even in the eyes of the truth. They have all this evidence. They're not going to change, okay? Because they don't want to, okay? They don't want to. They will never change, okay? But basically, you know, regret, it hurts us later on because you have to think about it this way. When you make a decision, sometimes you don't think about the full, you know, aftermath, the after effect, but the decisions that you have made in the past, there's no way for us to go back and fix those. Okay, you know, there's no time machine, there's no magic little pill, you know, and we cannot change choices from the past. Okay, the only thing that we can change are our choices for the present and to kind of modify and shape our behavior in order to have more positive and beneficial choices in the future. Okay, and certainly, you know, that spawns regret and, you know, guilt. I mean, all sorts of things. You know, but also there are different levels of self-deception. The highest level, which like I said, you know, is narcissist, antisocial, they will tend to rationalize and use any excuse in the book whatsoever, okay, to completely ignore the real reality, the truths. Okay, so they're going to try to reach, you know, anything that they can, you know, and they are rejecting any amount of truth and reality. And it's like, here's all this evidence. Like, you know what I mean? So they're just going to reach. And it's a shitty thing to do, you know, but, you know, I'm not everybody. I'm just, you know, I'm here to help. But basically, you know, there is motivative reasoning, which is something they're going to use. Like I said, rationalization. And this is self-regulation. This is basically you are going to believe the positive things about yourself or the situation or, you know, what have you, and you're going to reject the negative things, okay, like the negative aspects and things like that. And some common terms for this too, wishful thinking is one, blind optimism, you know, unrealistic optimism, you know, denial, things like that, you know, really... all these terms, they pretty much mean the same thing. It's just, you know, it occurs in the situation at that time. Okay, and basically, all of these things, the wishful thinking and you know, the denial and things like that, it tends to lead, it tends to spawn a delusion, which in turn the delusion leads to, you know, imagine futures and imagine hopes and imagine, you know, and it's kind of like you're almost breaking away from reality a little bit because you're still fooling yourself. Okay, but basically the mentality here that I absolutely love is the idea that people can only see the future if it coincides or, you know, is right along lines with their own wishes. Okay, and what I mean by this is they can see their future if their future entails exactly what they want and wish at that same time. If it doesn't, you know, that's it. And that also is a delusion in and of itself, you know. But basically, self-deception, I kind of want to get into a little bit right here, is that the earliest that self-deception starts, you know, after pregnancy, after birth, is at the age of 6 months. Okay, so these children, by about 6 months, they kind of learn, okay, well, if I scream, cry, you know, and then I get food and I get hugged and I get, you know, all of these other things, they are learning that early on in childhood. So, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, what do you do? But basically, you know, the whole idea here is that these individuals who self-deceive, they look at the situation, you know, problem, conflict, whatever it is. They assess the situation and they assess the validity of how that situation and experience will affect them. And if it's negative, how can we flip it around and spin it into a positive? Okay. These types of people, they will usually search for flaws to dismiss the validity of these flaws. And what I mean by that is they're going to look for flaws to point out to someone like, haha, see, you know, I don't have that flaw. Or they're going to try to turn it around and it's like, you're going right to the problem. Like, why would you point that out, you know? So basically, that's another form of self-deception. And deep down, the subconscious mind already knows that you're lying. It knows, which I'm going to get into in a second. You know, but anyway, you know, a couple different terms for this too I like is plausible plausible alternatives. I like denial, rationalization, things like that. Another example too that I love is the term plausible deniability. Okay, which is certainly, you know, everybody else knew about this except for me, so I can't be at fault. You know, but it's for the own good of that individual. It's kind of like the president maybe knowing something, you know, or purposely not being informed of something in order to, you know, kind of boost his integrity. You know, like he really just didn't know anything about it. Sort of like that. Basically, but this self-deception stems, it has cognitive roots. It tends to stem from early childhood, maybe with like colds or inattentive, you know, caregivers. The child has all of these flaws. So at the time he or she tries to reject these flaws and spin these situations to increase self-worth and to find emotional validation where there has been none. Okay. Another one too is self-deception, lying, manipulation. This is also, you know, past behaviors too that these children have witnessed, emotionally and psychological manipulation by family members, friends, you know, that sort of thing. It's observational learning really and what I mean by that is the children view it. They see it, they believe that that's right, that's what it is. And so they adopt these same ideas and patterns and, you know, thought behaviors and things like this. Inadvertently, it does shape the child's view on integrity and morals and values in life. You know, the idea of, you know, what's right and what's wrong, you know. Another thing too, I've noticed too, is that children that have been adopted or have been given up, you know, adopted, you know, later on in life, what they do is there's something called cognitive conditioning. And they struggle with self-deception because what they will do is they will look for this negative, you know, I've been adopted, I was given up, you know, nobody wants me. And certainly, yes, that is heartbreaking. So I sympathize with them, you know, on that. But what they will do is they will turn this negative into a positive, like a triumph or tragedy into triumph, which we had also discussed too in the hybristophilia video. But basically, I just kind of want to go over this real quick. You can lie to yourself, okay, but it's not going to last for long, okay? Your subconscious mind, which is your id, and that was in another video. The subconscious mind, the one thing it cannot tolerate is lies. Okay, and you can feed your subconscious mind. It will accept anything you give it except for lies. Okay, so basically what's going to happen here is the brain chemistry is kind of a little bit off. We have our, you know, 4 sections. We have our frontal, our parietal, our temporal, and our occipital lobe. Okay, well, our frontal and, you know, prefrontal cortex, this is where emotions are regulated. Okay, and so there's also a little portion in the brain, the amygdala. Okay, and it's shaped like an almond. And what this does is this regulates negative emotions. Okay, you know, frontal cortex here. And also too, we have to remember is that the frontal cortex is the center, the capacity for deception. Okay, so the people that tend to have higher deception rates tend to have a higher count of the white to gray brain matter. Whereas, let's say if my, you know, white to gray matter was 2 to 6 ratio or 2 to 7 ratio, someone else's could be, you know, 5 to 6 ratio. Okay, well, they're a little more deceptive. That, you know, I mean, that's just science. But basically, you know, a lot of these, the white matter as well leads to predisposition, antisocial traits, you know, denial, repression, you know, reaction formation is the ego's defense mechanism to keep this sanity. Mentality is the tragedy of deception is we see it ourselves and wish we could hide it better. The fact of the matter is we cannot. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, and join me tomorrow, and we're going to have another great discussion then. Bye.